Should we talk about Stanley Parable?
Yeah, let's get into it. Uh,
So,
yeah, so
what
obviously,
is it, Elliot?
uh,
It's a game
yeah, it's a
about a guy
game,
called Stanley.
from
Not really.
Galactic Cafe.
Mhm.
What genre would you call this, actually? I don't even know what genre.
Uh, Walking sim, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like this was maybe one of the earlier walking sims and kind of maybe started to define the genre, although it's become more narrative, where this game isn't narrative, it's kind of more exploratory. I don't know. I would still call it that, I guess.
okay, yeah. Yeah, but it's from like 2011/2013. I would be confused about the release date. Seems like there's
So,
multiple copies.
yeah, so originally, as I understand, it was created as a like a source mod or a Half-Life 2 mod or something, that became quite popular and then was developed into its own standalone title that was released in 2013, I think.
Okay,
Uh, so a very indie story.
yeah,
What did you know about this game going in, Elliot?
nothing. I um, I actually thought this was a different game. I've talked to you. I've talked to you about this offline, but
Mm.
there's a game called Inside that I guess just from looking at the logo of the Stanley Parable, I got them confused because I heard about Inside like 4 years ago on a YouTube video. So yeah, I wasn't even thinking of the right game when I started.
I really don't think they have that much in common, but whatever. I don't understand.
um, the only other thing I sort of like, the only other context I had going in was obviously, I think we mentioned this last month. Uh, we saw William Pugh, who was a big part
Yes.
of this game's design. He was one of the keynote speakers at a conference we both went to last year.
Yeah.
So he talked about it a bit there.
Yes. Indeed. Yeah, as well as some of his other stuff. Yeah, I guess I'll touch on my experience with this game going into it. I'm pretty sure I played it when it first came out. This is from the start of my stream I did yesterday. And actually, something went wrong with the stream. But the last play date there was meant to be 2013. I was checking that I would get the achievement where you don't play it for 5 years, and I did. So, to all people who are wondering,
Nice.
did I get that 5 year later achievement? I did. Congratulations, me. Um, but yeah, so I kind of knew this game. I think I played it for about 30 minutes. I got like an ending or two, and then uh, got bored and stopped. And so this time I played it a few bit longer. I saw some new stuff that I hadn't seen or known was coming up. But yeah, I wonder. We'll get into this more as we go, but I do kind of wonder whether the fact that I knew what this game was going to be really soured my experience of it this time, because I didn't. We'll get into this. I didn't love it this time around, Elliot.
Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot more than you from the sounds of it, but because there haven't been too many Game Club games where we've had experience with them going in, right? You had
Yes.
Slay the Spire,
Yeah.
which you already loved, and Getting Over It, you'd played a little bit of already. Is that it?
Yeah. I think so. I
Yeah,
think so.
because I've been completely fresh to all of them.
Mm.
Um, yeah, okay. So it's interesting to sort of keep track of that. Like, this might be the first game where you kind of had bounced off it in the past.
Mm. Well, until next month for Dark Souls, which is another game where that happened with.
Sure.
Yeah, let's break down what the game is about though, right? Like the
Yeah.
basic way that this game works is it's very much strange. It's a game about your agency, the player's agency, and kind of takes the idea of player agency and is kind of making stabs at a narrative around you as the player controlling a character, but you're really just kind of playing into the expectations on you and all that kind of stuff, I guess.
Yeah. To use a word that I feel like comes with a lot of baggage, it's a bit of a discussion on ludonarrative dissonance.
Hmm.
Um,
Buzzwords, love it.
yeah, so we'll get there. I just wish there was a non-pretentious term for that phenomena. Um,
It is a purely pretentious phenomena, so
like
unfortunately not.
especially for me, like
Should we explain that word for people? What ludonarrative and ludonarrative dissonance is? Um,
yeah,
ludo. So ludonarrative. Correct me if I'm wrong about this, Elliot. Is like the way that the narrative of a game, the in air quotes story of the game, uh, is experienced through the mechanics of the game and the way that you play the game. And ludonarrative dissonance refers to the concept that the story that you experience playing through a game may be at odds or in conflict with what the story is meant to be for a game through things like cutscenes and stuff like that.
yeah. So like, because the idea is ludology is the study of like games and game design and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
ludonarrative is basically how story and gameplay mix together, and yeah, that dissonance is like, if you have a game I think the term was initially created to describe BioShock, because like
Mm,
BioShock's story is talking about like, the morals of like, is it okay to kill these people, blah blah, but then the gameplay very much encourages you to kill everyone you meet and like
yes.
hoard supplies,
Yeah.
and then the story is like, oh, you've got to be selfless, and so there's a dissonance between those two things. Um, so yeah, that's where it comes from. I associate it with being a pretentious kid in year 12, because I I did a unit on video games in year 12 English, and like got good marks just by doing like using words like ludonarrative dissonance and stuff. So I
Mhm,
just
mhm,
associate
mhm.
it with being, yeah,
Being pretentious
yeah,
year
pretty
12
much.
English class. Yeah. Um, yeah. And so that's kind of what this game is exploring. It kind of touches at themes of like, tying together the idea of being a character in a video game with the idea of being like a corporate drone in a office system, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also at the same time kind of surreal and bizarre, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um,
Um,
so I want to play this video, and I'll keep the sound on for this one. So this is just
mhm,
me getting to the point where you have to pick the two doors for the first time.
cool.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well.
So, yeah, like I think this is such a brilliant moment just from a game design perspective, because the game sets you up as like, you are Stanley, and it narrates what you're doing at the start, and you don't have a choice. So
Mm,
you kind of fall into this rhythm of like doing what the voice tells you, because there's nowhere else to go. And then you reach
mm.
this point, and this like, I mean, it's the most pure setup. There's two blatant doors there, and they're like, you go through the left, and it's just such an invitation to really challenge the system. And it's like, that's the moment where I was like, oh, okay, that's what this game is.
Mm,
I think in the museum it mentions, oh, these two doors, that's where the concept for this whole game started. And I was like, I can see
yes.
that, because it is
Yeah.
just such a pure expression of this core concept of fucking with what the game is telling you to do.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. No, it's a neat moment for sure. The idea of introducing the narrator, introducing the fact that he's saying the things you're doing right as you're doing them or before you do them. Um, and there are a few moments in the game where the narration really works quite well in the sense of, for example, when you first get to the boss's office, um, you can
Mm.
either go straight for the keypad if you notice it, or kind of poke around, and the narration will respond to that, either saying, "Oh, Stanley kind of went around poking at books and looking at papers," or "Oh, Stanley ran straight for the keypad and tried to figure it out," right?
Yeah.
And so it has these moments that are like really, definitely, strongly reacting to what you're doing, and then also moments where it's more of a conversation and you can like break the heart of the narrator, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments in that regard is the ending where you turn the mind control thing back on, and so the narrator tries to blow you up, and they put you back in that room with all the buttons, but none of them actually help. And I did spend most of the time under the assumption one of them would work.
I don't think I got that ending, Elliot, but I can
really?
imagine it.
Also, if you turn the mind control thing on, it takes you
On
back.
instead of
Yeah. So you know how there's the room behind it with like, or on your way to the mind control thing, it had all
Yes,
these
with the
buttons you couldn't
buttons.
use.
Yeah.
So those all turn on, and there's like
Right.
things telling you what buttons to push to fix it, but they don't exist. And it's like,
So
so it gives you like, the narrator's like, in 2 minutes, I'm going to blow you up. And there's screens saying like, you know, these buttons deactivated. And I was frantically looking around for those buttons. And there were like 30 seconds to go. He's like, oh, did you actually think I'd give you the buttons to stop me? Like, it was a very fun moment.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of endings to this game. Should we talk about what did you do on your first playthrough?
My first playthrough was, I got to, there's like the room with all the lights, and then you have to throw yourself off the stairs a bunch of times to
Yes.
kill yourself.
Yep.
That was where I ended up on my first run.
Fair enough.
What about you?
For my first playthrough, I just did exactly what the narrator said. And so I got I think they call it the freedom ending, where you walk out the big bay doors.
That was my second ending. Yeah, I sort of went in for the second time, and I was like, oh, because I was working with the assumption it was like a 2-hour game, so I sort of got an ending in 10 minutes, and I was like, oh, okay, this is one of those. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to play through it a bunch of times. So I was like, well, let's just get the, like, good boy ending, and I'll just do everything that he says to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That ending, interestingly, I think is the most compelling to me. And I guess that's a lead in for us to start talking about the idea behind this game of your agency and taking that and making commentary about the act of playing video games. There's one, I can't remember how I got up to this one. There's one where the narrator like tricks you into thinking that you have a wife.
Yeah.
And then there's this sequence where he just kind of asks you to push buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah, this game has a lot of stuff in it. Oh yeah, there's this moment where you play through other games, including Minecraft and Portal.
That was very fun. That was,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the strength of this game is it's there to surprise you, right? Like that's what it's really trying to do. And yeah, it has some cool surprises. I was surprised when suddenly I was in Minecraft. That was nice. That was a nice surprise for me as someone who loves Minecraft.
Yeah, it caught me totally off guard, and then you go to Portal in a minute. I think, yeah, because this is something we'll talk about in a bit, I'm sure, but like this game, you're right, it's all about surprising you, and the humor is very much that kind of like haha, random what the fuck humor, which is like a bit hit and miss. I thought it was mostly hits. Like I usually found myself like as each story was just getting weird, like chuckling along. I was enjoying each one as it was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder. This game came out in 2013, right?
Yep.
I wonder whether my impression of it is just colored by the fact that it has dated in the 7 years. Like it doesn't. I feel like I've played other games that are like this, and they've done what this game is trying to do better, to the extent that this game didn't have that much of an impact on me, and I didn't enjoy it that much as a result. Yeah, I don't know. It's like Seinfeld is bad syndrome, you know, where like
Yeah.
something I'm sure was transformative for its time, but it's just been a while now, and other people have imitated it better, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to that. I haven't really played any of those others, so I don't know. I can sort of say without any of that context, I enjoyed this.
Do you think it's a game that will stick with you, Elliot?
yes.
Mm.
Not not like I'm not gonna like in 10 years remember it as fondly as like some of my all-time favorites, but like
Mm.
I certainly like it was unique enough for me like and what I've
Yeah.
done in my past that like it stands out.
Yeah, I guess I just kind of wanted more from it. I don't know. We'll get into it. I think one example is um, the most surprising thing I saw in this game was when it suddenly was Minecraft. But that kind of wore away quite quickly because I do think, from a technical perspective, this game is held back by its engine and the fact that it is like a whatever source game that is I don't know, you can't really do anything that wild in,
Yeah, I get that. Like I definitely felt the interactions could use a bit of work. It took me about 4 run-throughs before I realized you could click on stuff.
Mm,
Because I tried it on some early things and it didn't work.
mm.
But they still give you the sound. So I found that a little bit confusing. But yeah, I don't know. We'll get into that a lot in this next slide, I think.
Yeah, let's jump into it. I've been trying to hold back from being too critical, but let's jump into
Yeah,
we might as well start talking about it.
just one last note I did have on this slide was I also want to give them props for the way the opening area randomly reshuffles itself. So sometimes
Mm,
there's like the blue variant. I got a bright variant. I got a variant where paper was everywhere. Um, that was just a nice way to stop the whole thing feeling, I don't know, like repetitive, I suppose, for that
mm,
opening area. Just gave me
mm,
something to look forward to in that bit where I would just, be having to go through the motions.
mm. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. It has
Oh, hello?
geometry and
Sorry,
oh,
I lost you
can you
for
hear
a.
me?
I missed pretty much all
So,
of that.
okay. I was just saying it has a few moments like that where it like surprises you or plays around with like non-Euclidean geometry and stuff like that in a way that is
Yeah,
nice. It's cool. Yeah, it's cool enough. Let's get into it. I
sure.
I think the thing that I really disliked about this game on reflection is it doesn't feel like it's saying anything to me. It feels like this game has some cool ideas, but they're not in service of anything useful. What it's doing is it's surprising you a bit. It's kind of keeping you chuckling along, but there's nothing here that I'm like, ah, yes, and that's why this game was made, or
Yeah.
that's something
Uh,
stick with the game.
Yeah,
Did it? Did I lose you for a
sorry.
second?
Yeah,
What's going on
I'm
here?
losing you a bunch. I was just gonna say, yeah, like so I think you were just sort of mostly saying it just. Well, I guess the way I would phrase it is, I just found it to be a really unfocused
Mm,
game. Like there was
mm,
lots of interesting commentary on ludonarrative dissonance, or the role of narrator versus player, and all of that. But
was there though?
what
I like.
in each what I want to say is in each ending, it felt like there was maybe a cool observation or something, but there was nothing like tying them all together. So
Mm,
like I do one and I'd be like, oh, like that was kind of a neat little bit, but then it wouldn't really relate to the other ones. So I kind of came out of doing like a bunch of the endings with no idea what the game was really trying to tell me.
mm. Yeah, yeah, you're right. And that's why I think to me the ending where you just follow the instructions is the cleanest because it is this ending of like you're breaking the system, and that at least is some kind of narrative payoff. Whereas everything else just feels like it kind of meanders around and then ends with a gag or a half baked idea.
I mean, well, I think like I think that Minecraft and Portal one is quite cool, and that because that's the one I think you get for never following any instructions.
Yeah.
And similarly, it's quite clean in that like it's basically the narrator throwing a tantrum because you won't engage with him on what he wants to do.
But
But there's no relation between those two. Like, is the
yeah,
problem?
and that's not relevant. Like, it's not relevant to anything. It's just a like, why is that? Why is
Yeah.
that a part of the story?
Yeah, no, yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I found each ending had this moment that made me sort of go, like, oh, cool. Like, I enjoyed this little snippet, but whenever I took that step back, I didn't quite understand why.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. I the vibe I got from this game is something that I actually kind of really dislike about certain well, where a game sets up this is the way that you're meant to engage with me as a game, and then like tries to make you feel bad as a player for doing that. And you kind of alluded to it before with like BioShock and other games like that, where it's like, oh, this game's a shooter and all you can do is shoot other characters. But then you get to the end and a guy in a suit says, oh, we're not so different. You shot all those people. And I'm like, well, it's a fucking game. Like, if you want to make that point, you can, but you can't make it by having the only way I can actually complete the game is to shoot people. That's nonsense, right? I think Undertale is a game that does that well, where it's like you can engage with this game in a way that is aggressive or wholesome, and the game will respond to that and try and teach you a lesson based on that. But if it's a game where you only have one thing you can do, the characters then can't be mad at you for doing the thing that you're doing. It just feels it's not a point. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so the first ending you got, the one where you jump off the stairwell, right? The way you get to that, you get to this sequence where the narrator kind of gets frustrated with you and then takes you to see something. What he takes you to see is this light show, right?
Yeah.
And he says, oh, I really love this light show. I feel like I could be happy here. Let's just stay here. And you can stay and you can watch the light show for a while. But you can't, there's no way to, I tried to just stand there and not do anything and see if that would get an ending. And it
Same.
doesn't. You just have to eventually go and throw yourself off this stairwell and die. And as you're doing it, the narrator is saying, no, don't do that. Oh, why can't you just let me be happy? And it's so cheap because my response to that is, well, what do you want me to do? Like, there's no path of action for me to make that choice. I'm being funneled down one course of action I can take. So it just any potential ramifications that might have had are just lost because the choice is do it. There's no option to make a choice there. And that's what it feels like this game is to me, is just funneling you into making one of two choices and then yelling at you that you made the choice that you had to make, even though there's no other options. Like, it's just, I don't know.
I agree with you on that big picture thing. Like, I do agree. Like, I would get all the different endings by doing slightly different choices and not really feeling like that choice affected which ending I got. Aside from just like it sort of being random, like there was no thematic connection to most of them.
Yeah.
I will say, like on an individual level though, I didn't mind that one, and maybe it was because it was my first ending, and it's an ending you get for kind of going against the narrator constantly. But like him saying "Don't kill yourself" and then me doing it, like, did work for me because in this first playthrough I'd kind of set him up as an antagonistic figure.
Mm.
And I wonder if maybe that's sort of the difference, is this lack of connection between all of the various run-throughs means that you're not forming a consistent relationship with the narrator, and that might have been where it was falling apart. Like, whereas, because, I did that one where he was sort of antagonistic towards me, then I did the freedom ending, and that sort of just taught me that it was a complete refresh on how I was meant to interact with the narrator. But like in an individual story, I think it was somewhat consistent.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you're right that having because when I restarted the game, I started my second playthrough, I was expecting to have oh, you're back or something,
Yeah.
But there's not. You might get oh, this isn't Stanley's office, but that's just a random event, right? It's not a connection as far as I could tell.
I think what would be even cooler for this and get it closer to approaching like having a a really strong theme or subject matter it's talking about, is if your employee number was random each session and you were a different person, rather than being Stanley, you were just like another drone in this mind control facility.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I feel like that's maybe approaching. I've only played Portal 1, but it kind of feels like that's approaching the part of the Portal plot. But yeah, like, and that would get around.
You haven't only played Portal 1. We played Portal 2 together.
I meant like story wise.
I was like, no, we didn't.
In terms of story. Yeah, like I'm just trying to think, like, because that would be a cool way of like sort of working around the whole lack of connection between them, because it's like, there's a connection, but for the player it does, or for the character you're playing it doesn't exist. Then you can sneak some right anyway. But yeah, I don't know. Again, to me, it just comes down to that lack of connection between the narratives. I feel like each one kind of works on its own for me. It was when I took a step back after finishing where I was like, what was the broader message? What was tying each of these 10-minute run-throughs they made me do together? And that's all I felt was really missing.
Yeah, I don't know. It just felt like there was no point to it. You know what the highlight to me was?
Oh, I've lost you again.
Oh, sorry. I was saying the highlight to me was going to the museum.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thing. And it actually felt like, oh, I'm actually getting something from this game, just from a perspective of seeing some of the behind the scenes of it is actually more interesting to me than playing the game itself.
Did you used to
that
play?
Was my last.
Did you used to play Ratchet and Clank growing up?
I played one or two of them, yeah.
Because they had a thing, if you completely beat the game, you unlock the Insomniac Museum, and this I like. Maybe other games did it too, but this felt like a tribute to that. So the Insomniac Museum, they'd have like artwork, enemies, physics that didn't make it into the game, like clips about levels they didn't put in, stuff about the developers, and that was what made me want to get into game design as a kid, that museum. And so I was thrilled to see it in the Stanley Parable, because I was like, oh, it's the Insomniac Museum. Like I found that such a great inclusion.
I mean, yeah, it was cooler than any other part of the game to me, just because it was interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mentioned before this game wasn't that surprising to me, and I worry that that's an unfair criticism, because it feels like a criticism of like the engine that it's built with, and it's a 2013 indie game. Like, that's maybe not super fair. But if you compare it to other games, like there are other games out there. Like there's this fucking Flash game called There Is No Game on Newgrounds, which is, to me, is a small little Flash free game that is way more transformative and surprising than Stanley Parable, just in the fact that it does weird things and it surprises you more. And I feel like if this game had done that, it would be better, but it just doesn't. I don't know.
So it's interesting, like, because you brought that up, obviously, earlier today with me as we were putting these notes together. So I went and played it because it takes like 10 minutes to play.
Yeah, quick game.
I don't know if it was necessarily better than a Path of Stanley Parable to me. In that it had that same problem to me where as I finished it, I was like, I don't really know what this was saying. I will agree it had more interesting interactions, like I guess spoilers for There Is No Game. The bit where I figured out I could take the cup around with me and use that to get water from the waterfall for the tree. Like that was a kind of mind blowing in a bit of a like, there were like Baba is you moments in this game.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So it like cooler interactions, but I guess in terms of that wider story message aspect, I didn't see it as superior in any way.
Sure, I don't think that game has a compelling narrative or anything, but like in the sense that this aspect of the Stanley Parable, where it's a game that is trying to give you cool little moments that you aren't expecting, it just doesn't really do that well, I don't think. You know?
Yeah, I imagine from a design perspective, there would have been a really hard line there to balance between like, because it is only point and click, wanting to add things like a jump or whatever, in certain spots. Like I'm just trying to think, like, weird interactions. It's hard to do with that
Well,
character controller.
let me counter that point by expanding. So this game was designed by Davey Redden and William Pugh, right? The two
Yep.
main designers. William Pugh, 2 years after this, went on to make a game called Dr. Langaskov, the Tiger, and the Emerald, something heist. Like, it's a weird long title. And it's basically an extension of what this game is, but better in my mind. Like,
Okay.
and it's just a game where you're walking around and can interact with things. I don't think that game has a jump either. It's very stylistically similar to Stanley Parable, but it's interesting. The two creators, Davey and William. Davey went on to create a game called The Beginner's Guide, which is much more about exploring the ideas of games and gameplay and the people who create games, which is clearly a part of Stanley Parable I don't think succeeds very well, but really does well in The Beginner's Guide. And William went on to create this other game that takes this other part of Stanley Parable, the surprising interactions, and goes on to make that in a lot better way, in my opinion. So it's I really just feel like this game was the staging ground for two better games that didn't quite work well together in Stanley Parable, but were very well made and did very well when the creators went off and just focused on them properly.
Was this the first game from these two? Like, I wonder if that's just part of it.
Yeah, maybe. I wonder.
Like, it could have been, they worked on it together, and then by the end, they both sort of had ideas on what they wanted to do.
Yeah. No, I think it's... I don't think they made that many things beforehand. Yeah. What else has Galactic Cafe made?
Because I will say, like, William Pugh also did Accounting, which was obviously one of the earliest VR games. So it's been fun to watch that game kind of grow. As sitting alongside Job Simulator is one of those games that launches on every VR headset at release. Accounting to me is actually basically the same strengths and weaknesses as the Stanley Parable. Like, and I didn't think about this till I saw you'd written these other notes, and I wanted to include it because, like, Accounting has a series of fun scenes, but at the end I was like, I don't really know what that was saying. So it was very much like I could see a bit of a style of Williams in these two games of his that I've played now, and that I felt like he had all these really cool ideas, but nothing to draw them together, or at least nothing I noticed. Like, maybe I'm just a dunce.
So I've looked it up. Galactic Cafe doesn't have any other games, as far as I can tell. But they are going back to make a Redux version of Stanley Parable, which maybe will be better. Maybe it'll be a better version.
We'll see.
Yeah.
There are certainly I do still enjoy this kind of like random humor. Like, so the idea that there's an achievement for not playing the game for 5 years is pretty funny. The only ending I didn't get, because after I got like about 2/3 of the endings, and I was starting to struggle to remember what I hadn't done, I used like an online guide to get the ones I hadn't.
Nice. Yeah.
And the only one I didn't end up getting was the one where you actually play that game with the baby and the fire for like 4 hours.
Yep.
But I do think it's funny that ending exists.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, it has good ideas. This game has good ideas. They just don't feel like they work. I don't know. It just didn't work for me.
Yeah, it didn't fall quite as flat to me, but I in general agree with your criticisms. I just didn't find them as grating, I suppose.
I'm trying to think if this is an unfair criticism. If I can think of, as we mentioned before, as Wildbow has just put in chat, like if this was just the first example of it and it's unrefined compared to later examples, I don't think I know any examples from 2013 or beforehand that were doing the same thing better than Stanley Parable. But also, I don't know that I would know them because I was not super into games at the time.
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah. Anywho. Should we... what else do we have to say about Stanley Parable?
Well,
I feel like I've been too negative on it.
I'll open it up to Q&A as
Yeah.
well. So if anybody has any questions they want to ask us, or I mean, if people want to tell us what their first ending was, I feel like that would be part of the joy of this game for
Yeah.
me, is like sharing stories and like learning from people where they ended up their first time.
Yeah. What were people's first endings? That's a good question.
Because I actually, like, as I said, my first ending, I got the space one, and that's not quite the do everything against. It's because, like, you know how he gives you the, like, you've got to go through the red door,
Yeah.
and the third time the blue door's behind you.
Yeah.
I didn't look behind me, so I didn't know there was the blue door. So I was like, oh, they're
Nice.
forcing me to go through the red door. So I was
Yeah.
like, the only reason I didn't get the full negative ending was just because I didn't see
You
it.
didn't look behind you, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
See, so whereas, yeah, like Alejandro did the same thing you did.
Yeah, the
And-
good boy ending. Because I was just kind of like, I know I can go these other paths. I want to see what the base version is.
I get that. I tend to do the opposite. I'm like, oh, okay, there's an intended path. I'm gonna break it, and then I will go do the thing.
Yeah.
And
fair
that
enough.
ruined, like, that has been an ethos that has hurt me in other games. Like, there were like one example that jumps to mind was like Breath of the Wild. I intentionally tried to go in the stupidest path I could at first, and it ended up costing me like 10 hours before I sort of gave in and just went to Zora's Domain. Yeah.
Mm,
I think
yeah.
probably in Dark Souls so far, but we'll get there.
We'll talk about that. Yeah. I don't know. I wonder if I kind of... I don't want to stray into this, but we're going to. I wonder what I would do to improve this game. I feel like it needed to have a more bold statement in it somewhere, because there are a few times where the game wants you to quit, right? Actively, the game wants you to quit because it's kind of this vibe of like the only winning move is not to play, right?
Yep.
Fine, that works. But it doesn't, you know, I got that vibe on my first playthrough, and obviously I'm not going to do that on my first playthrough, right? Like that's clearly just not going to work. I wonder if it could hit that statement more strong by, you know, not letting you be able to get the freedom ending until you're like 4 endings in or whatever, and then forcing you to quit, like delete, like, I don't know, fucking wiping your game or some shit.
What I like about this is you're starting to turn it into like a you know, Groundhog Day time loop type story, and that I can get behind. Because
Yeah.
I do actually agree. Like, I think that is the natural place I want to go for a game like this, just because that gives you this sense of progression.
Yeah, it gives you a sense that you're doing something. You've got some, I don't know, impact or agency or purpose. Some purpose. This game just feels purposeless.
Yeah. Like, yeah, if you know, if I were tasked with trying to build a new version of something like this, I would take this step back and be like, what do we want to say with this? And then kind of rebuild the endings and the story from that. That was the part that just felt like it was missing.
And maybe that's what will happen if the deluxe version of Stanley Parable ever comes out. I'm kind of unsure whether it's actually real or just a joke. It's hard to tell, to be honest.
With William Pugh, could be either.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about Davy Redden.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like Misfits did the same as me and did the contrarian ending first.
The unplug the phone ending. What's that?
So did you get to the phone and then you have to call your wife?
Yes.
Yeah. So I got that ending by myself, but I needed that guide to tell me. So when the phone is there ringing, you can actually go around the back and unplug the phone,
Unplug it. Right.
and that gets you like a whole different ending. And that's one of those endings I never would have found by myself.
Mm.
But yeah, that's one where the creator or the narrator really has a sort of meltdown, because it's like, you know, your choices were to answer the phone or not answer the phone, and you took a third option that he wasn't ready for. And the game like fully breaks, and you end up having an out of body experience where you disconnect from Stanley. It is that's one of the weirder endings.
I'm sad I missed it. I wonder, that's something that I liked about the museum, is it gave me so many ideas of things I could try, right? Because they said things like, oh, originally there was a thing where if you let the phone ring out, blah would happen. I was like, oh, I should try that. I should try this thing. I should try that thing. But I never did. I didn't have the desire to continue to play the game after. At the end of the museum ending, you get this bit where this new narrator is like, oh, you should just quit. And then I did. And that's the last I played of the game. So I think I beat it. I think I won.
Yeah. Well, if you've got that, like the achievement for not playing for 5 years, that's the real winning move.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on then to one last slide before we go on. It's I just wanted to check in on Dark Souls. I think this will be a little quick segment, but especially to everyone watching, like, you know, how are you going in your playthroughs as well, especially if you're another newbie like us two. Yeah. I mean, well, how are you going so far, Ruben?
I mean, I'm really enjoying it so far. I don't think I've had it be a secret that I disliked Dark Souls the previous times I've tried to play it. But this time I've finally gotten into it. I think my previous versions were just I was playing on a bad version of the game, and that's apparently enough to just ruin the experience.
It does seem weird that version existed. It was like a terrible port or something.
Yes, that's just atrociously bad. So I've fixed it up. I'm playing on the recommended version, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm really enjoying it. I think I'm about 70% through. Got to do more streams of it. I've gotten a bit busy at work lately, but yeah, I'm digging it. I'm excited to talk about it. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of interesting things that it's doing in service of a purpose, unlike other games that I won't mention.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think I was nervous going into it, but I wasn't as hesitant as you. But so far I'm having the opposite. I have not enjoyed what I've played so far at all.
Why not? What's going on?
I don't. So far the difficulty to me has not been like because the game is hard. It's because the game doesn't tell me how things work or what to do. Or what to do isn't fair, because like freedom in games is good. Like, you know, pick a path and stuff is great. So I take that back, but like, you know, like I get to a bonfire and like I don't know what it does. There's all these options for things to do there.
The UI for the game is atrociously bad. It's like you go to a bonfire and you get like 20 options, and half of them you click it and it's like, oh, you can't do that. And you're just like, oh, okay. I guess I'll never know what that is.
Yeah. And like just a lot of things in it that like are usually features in games I don't like the leveling system and having stats. I'm never a fan of RPG stats. But that's fine. Those are just the little things that I'm just sort of piling on because I didn't like what I did so far. I think I'm going to try and approach it a bit differently this month, in that I usually like really go out of my way to have like a pure experience for media, where like I want to go in like a spoiler free and without other people helping me. And I've just realized I was doing that with Dark Souls and trying to avoid listening to people's advice, and I hate it. So I may as well try and change my tack and just actually let other people walk me through it.
Yeah. I think it's a valid thing to do. Like, let people. I know we have a few community members who would love to be like, oh no, this thing's for that. You can use it in this circumstance. So just let them in.
Yeah,
and they will happily give you the tips.
Because that's and people were trying to do that. Like, to their credit, there are a few people who I think are watching right now who were trying to do that, and I was like fighting against them. And because that's usually something I hate. Like I want to, and, you know, I'll probably talk about this a little bit next month because I will sort of say I think it's bad game design to have such an obtuse thing like this.
Yeah.
But like I'm gonna stop letting that ruin everything else for me, I suppose.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think Dark Souls can be a very obtuse game in a lot of ways, yeah, to its detriment, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to get to the hard bits that are just genuinely because the game's hard, because that's the fun kind of hard.
Mhm.
But yeah, yeah, I
Honestly,
too.
not that hard of a game in my experience. I was just actually expecting it to be harder, but I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been playing games with you long enough to know that that doesn't necessarily apply to me.
Mm.
You and I can have very different concepts of difficulty. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be, yeah, it'll be interesting. I want to go into it with a fresh attitude, I think.
Yeah.
Because I had a fairly busy month, didn't play it that much, so I want to hit it hard in November and see if I can come at it differently.
The month of Dark Souls, November. Yeah. Cool. Cool.
Yeah, see, so Walbo's just brought up, they think like Dark Souls is sort of by design a game where you could play it for years and then go, oh, like this exists, like
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of that. Maybe it's the collectathon player in me, but I like to know all the things and get told about them. I don't. Yeah.
There is a lot of 3D running around, jumping and collecting things though in Dark Souls, so you should like it, Elliot.
That was the one part I was enjoying, honestly. Like the actual gameplay
was looking for all the
great.
little sparkly items. Yeah.
I was enjoying the movement, even the combat. I'm like, combat is something that's very hit and miss for me. I was actually kind of getting into it. Like it was all the stuff around it that was just sort of grinding me down.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I'm gonna try and leave that bad juju behind me and come at it fresh.
Yeah. Encourage people to give you hints where they say things like, "Oh, what about that? Did you see that thing?" Because that will help. That's what people have been doing for me. People will be like, "Oh, you heard that sound? What was that? Maybe you should go investigate." And I'm like, "Okay, that'll help me not just run around in circles for 30 minutes."
Yeah. See, I usually try and avoid that like the plague, but I will change my ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Good stuff. All right. Anything else we want to touch on for Stanley or Dark Souls?
Yeah, bit of a second Q&A.
Second Q&A. Anyone else got any updates on how their playthroughs are doing? How's everyone going with Dark Souls? Enjoying it? Not enjoying it?
Yeah. So Prof is saying Dark Souls was designed to be a game where the community worked together to find secrets. So teamwork is never.
But I mean, okay.
If I had friends, I wouldn't be playing video games. You know?
I don't want to skip what we're going to talk about next month, but I really think, you know, the what is it called? Like the orange soapstones. They're like writings that are messages from other players that you can like rate. You know what I'm talking about?
Did I know that from? Yeah, I thought they were from the devs for a long while.
They are at the very start.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, like, man, it's a game that's built around having the community. I think I experienced it the same way as you, Elliot, where the first time I played Dark Souls, it was like, oh, I just kind of ran into every trap, and I was like, this is just like the devs just being sadists, and I'm not getting fun out of this. But then once I looked at it through the lens of the devs are being sadists, but it's the goal of the community to help guide each other against them, I was like, okay, now I can get behind this narrative of like, the devs are here trying to fuck you, and we as the community are going to leave helpful messages and shit for each other so that we can like fucking rise up and teach these devs a lesson. And I actually really love that, like thematically.
That is a fun dynamic, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got Cyber Homes chiming in to say that they also weren't enjoying it, and then they just let one of our other community members, Dawn, lead them through it, and they're having a lot more fun. So yeah, that's the sort of thing I guess I'll try over the next few weeks.
Yeah, Dawn is the champion of Dark Souls, genuinely just putting in overtime to make sure everyone's having a good time. But that's what Dark Souls is about. It's about having community members all work together. So,
okay,
you know.
I will leave my my impression of it as a single player game behind.
Cool. All right. I guess that's where we'll wrap up then, right?
Yeah, just throwing up the, usually this is the side where we sort of announce what the next game is, but you all obviously know.
Yep.
So this next one will be on the 5th of December. That date is absolutely correct. There no confusion this time. We got a bit caught out. I have the calendar thing for Game Club set for the first Sunday Australia time, and obviously with the month changing between Saturday and Sunday, I think the date of this one confused everyone.
Yep.
So that problem's going away next month though. 5th of December for you in America, 6th for those of us in the better hemisphere. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
Let's
nice
play
short
Dark
game
Souls
club.
and have fun. Oh, no, wait. Before we wrap up, just as a reminder, folks, you can we have a form where you can submit games that you might want us to play. Just as a reminder, so that everyone kind of keeps that alive and we have suggestions for stuff. We have a lot of things to go through, but I just think it's good to make sure we're still kind of prompting that so that everyone knows they can suggest games if they have something that we want to talk about. Because I think with us finishing Dark Souls, when did we do our first game club? In like March. We've gone through all the like big games that everyone was like, oh, you have to play this, you have to play this, you have to play this. So it's going to probably be a bit more, disparate and wild. So yeah, get in there and make suggestions.
Yeah, there's not sort of one candidate that has 3 times the nominations of all the other candidates anymore.
Yay.
So yeah, make sure that if you haven't submitted your favorite game or whatever, that you do so.
Yeah. Cool. All right. All right.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, yeah. So that's it. Nice short game club for as we sort of check in the middle of the month, and we'll see you all, on the 5th/6th of December as we talk about Dark Souls.
All right, folks. See you next time for more Dark Souls. I'll be streaming more, so catch my streams. Yeah. All right. See ya.